Howdy all, welcome back to Eye of the Beholder. You probably know the spiel by heart now, where I review the Dungeons & Dragons miniatures created by WOTC and WizKids in the 20 years between 2003 and 2023. Today we'll be picking up where we left off with the Demon Minis, starting with the Dretch. Dretches are the wretched of the demon world, offed by higher level demons like they were wearing red shirts. They spend most of their time wallowing in self-loathing, bemoaning their fate amongst the others of their mob. They rely on sheer numbers in combat, so playability-wise, you'll need a bunch as they are never encountered alone.
Fun fact, a Dretch is the very first demon miniature, with this one appearing in WOTC's second set, 2003's Dragon Eye. It's pretty damn big for a small mini. Standing almost upright, it could face off against a dwarf eye to eye. Despite this, his arms hang very low with the elongated wrists and hands dragging along the ground. Paint is what it is, dirt brown, but we do get a bit of a white fur on the underbelly and a mournful look on the face. Score: Paint 14, Pose 13, Playability 10, too big, Pizzazz 16, for a score of 53. We don't get another Dretch until WizKids gives us one in, appropriately enough, the Rage of Demons set of 2015. More size appropriate than the WOTC version, but we do lose a lot of the detailing that made the WOTC version cool. This one looks more like a demonic canine to me, down on all fours as it makes its way through the abyss. Same dirt brown coloring as before, but with an all-white head, sans any detailing. Score: Paint 11, Pose 12, Playability 15, Pizzazz 11, for a score of 49. Four years later, we get our final Dretch in 2019's Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus set, and it's another demon that has been changed by the Gnoll god Yeenoghu, called Yeenoghu's Dretch. Coloring is more a sickly green than what we've seen before, while the Gnoll's head gives it an even more canine appearance. The stance looks a bit more aggressive too, unusual for a Dretch, but that's probably Yeenoghu's influence. Score: Paint 13, Pose 13, Playability 15, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 54.
Diebucks in their natural form look sort of like incorporeal grills, but they are rarely encountered in their natural form. They have a driving compulsion to indulge in hedonistic behavior by possessing the bodies of the recently deceased to impersonate the unfortunate soul. Of course, their demonic nature gives them away after a while, forcing them to move on to their next victim.
Our only Diebuck mini comes in 2022's Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse set, and personally, I wish they went with their true form. As a DM, I can use any of my many humanoid minis to represent the possessed version. This one wouldn't fool anyone anyways. Frankly, it looks more like a well-dressed zombie, albeit with a missing shoe. Wasted opportunity, moving on. Score: Paint 14, Pose 13, Playability 13, Pizzazz 8, for a score of 48.
Despite their appearance, Glabrizus specialize in temptation, not in pleasures of the flesh, obviously, but in power, spreading corruption from behind the scenes. But one look at one tells you they are no slouch at combat either, with two middle, regular arms to cast spells or wield weapons, plus two huge upper arms ending in lobster-like claws. Glabrizo can range in height from 9 to 15 feet, so they come in both large and huge size.
Like this huge version Glabrizu from WOTC's first set to feature huge minis, 2004's Giants of Legend. The dark red, heavily muscled body looks properly demonic. I'm not sure if that's a loincloth covering his nether regions or just hair. Pose has him striding forward with one clawed arm raised high, while head, horned and showing all the teeth, stare down contemptuously. Interesting detail on the spike pauldrons on his shoulders. They seem to be anchored to his body. Score: Paint 17, Pose 20, Playability 23, Pizzazz 23, for a score of 83. If you want to go with a slightly less threatening Glabrizu, use this large, uncommon version from 2019's Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus set. No armor or loincloth for this guy, just blood red from tip to toe, with black claws, horns, and back spikes for contrast. Pose to me shows this Glabrizu roaring out a challenge, clawed arms widespread, mouth wide open, with his smaller arms clenched in fury. Nice bracers, by the way. Score: Paint 15, Pose 17, Playability 23, Pizzazz 19, for a score of 74.
Gnaw demons, or masticars, are created when vermin feed on a dead demon's body. As such, their entire existence is to consume, even though they don't require sustenance. Flying about on leather wings, their bloated body makes them poor flyers. Fun fact: Gnaw demons are almost as common on the mortal planes as they are in the abyss. Evil spellcasters will sometimes use them as familiars.
Our only Gnaw demon comes in WOTC's Against the Giant set of 2008, and my oh my, doesn't he look pleased with himself. Look up shit-eating grin, and Webster could do no better than this guy. Sitting on his ass with his hands over his bloated body, I'm sure he just enjoyed a good meal. Monochrome gray of body and wings. Note the pointed tail. Score: Paint 12, Pose 15, Playability 13, Pizzazz 15, for a score of 55.
Goristros look like huge misshapen minotaurs whose physical strength is second only to the Baylor, but with the intelligence of, well, a bull. This makes them perfect siege engines in the demonic armies, smashing their way using horn, hoof, and fist to destroy all in their path. Fun fact: Goristros possess hardly any of the supernatural abilities associated with demons, relying on brute strength as they make their way through the abyss.
We get one Goristro from each manufacturer. WOTC's comes from their Monster Manual Legendary Evil set of 2009. The jet black of the torso and fur really highlight the golden bracers, armbands, and incongruously, rings, as well as the white spikes running from the top of his head and down his back. Pose has him standing at the ready, arms out and hands turned toward the target, while his tooth-filled maw is open and ready. Score: Paint 17, Pose 17, Playability 15, Pizzazz 20, for a score of 69. WizKids Goristro comes from their Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage set of 2019. Red of body and rocking the same golden accoutrement as his predecessor, Pose is much more aggressive. Charging forward on cloven hooves, arms in a definite attack position. I imagine the head is about to come down as he charges his foes, skewering them on his horns. And did I mention he's big? Check out the two together. Score: Paint 20, Pose 25, Playability 19, Pizzazz 24, for a score of 88.
Hezrus have a somewhat toad-like appearance, albeit with very muscular arms and bodies. Basically middle managers in the abyss, supervising lesser demons while sucking up to their superiors. In battle, they are the sergeants, keeping the mobs of dretches moving forward before joining the battle themselves. Fun fact: Hezrus smell bad. I mean really bad. Enough to overwhelm anything possessing a nose before them.
Of course, our first Hezru comes in a set called Angel Fire. Black of body and white of fangs, Pose captures it mid-rage, about to batter an opponent with its upraised fist, using his offhand to stabilize itself on the ground for maximum damage. The triple rows of spines running down his back are quite pronounced, which is good, as the black of the mini makes other details difficult to see. Score: Paint 13, Pose 16, Playability 14, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 56. Four years later, WOTC gives us another Hezru in their Monster Manual Legendary Evil set, and really, I'm not sure why. It's basically the same as the Angel Fire Mini, black of body, white of teeth, full of rage and fury. Well, maybe it's an uncommon rather than the Angel Fire Rare. No, rare as well. Well, no reason to give it a different score. Paint 13, Pose 16, Playability 14, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 56. Our only WizKids Hezru comes from the Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus set of 2019, and, well, that scamp Yanogo has been up to his old tricks again. Meet Yanogu's Hezru, and like the previous hybrids, the normally blocky Hezru body and toad-like head has been nullified. Dark brown body with light brown underbelly and spines, he seems ready to spring, legs bent, and one arm grounded for balance. Score: Paint 14, Pose 16, Playability 12, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 55.
An undead elemental demon? Are you freaking kidding me? Meet the Emolith, which arises from the spirits of slain demons who fuse together, forming a hellish column of fire from which its hands and head appear. No demon hates the living as much as the Emolith, who actually prefer the company of high-level undead such as liches or vampires.
Our only Emolith mini comes in WOTC's Dungeons of Dread set of 2008, and it is outstanding. This is perhaps the best use of translucent plastic that I've seen. Note how the undulated column of fire goes from a bright orange at the base, then fading to a dull red at the apex. The four black hands, close to the body but capable of lashing out far beyond expectations, are cool, and the head, with the orange of the hellfire peeking through the eyes and mouth, is even cooler. Maybe I should ding it on playability, but I'm not. Score: 100.
What is lower than a Dretch? That would be a main demon, formed when a chaotic evil soul dies and ends up in the abyss. They travel in packs in the various abyssal layers, driven forward by more powerful demons to form uncontrollable mobs of rage, useful sometimes as shock troops, but just as likely to turn on each other or their overseers.
Our only main demon comes in WizKids' first set, 2014's Tyranny of Dragons. It's a common, so easy enough to gather a mob if needed. This small-sized mini is accurate if not particularly noteworthy. Pale pinkish skin with some sallow yellow splotches, with dark-rimmed eyes gazing downward as it shuffles along. Funny to think, many of the most powerful demons of the abyss started out as lonely mains. Score: Paint 12, Pose 12, Playability 14, Pizzazz 12, for a score of 50.
From the weakest demon to one of the most powerful, the Merilith are known for their systematic, logical minds, acting as the tacticians and advisors to demonic nobility. And while they are generally not on the front lines of battle, they eagerly wade in if given a chance, attacking intelligently and methodically, wielding weapons in each of their 6 arms. Fun fact, Yao Tai particularly worship Meriliths, for obvious reasons.
Of course, we get our first Merilith mini in WOTC's Blood War set of 2006, and it's pretty good. WOTC does a particularly good job on the scaling of the lower body, which coils about the base before rising Cobra-like to confront its foe. A solid metal breastplate protects her torso as her outstretched arms wield a dagger, longsword, mace, another dagger, hand axe, and hand axe. And the facial detail? Best of the bunch. Score: Pain 18, Pose 25, Playability 20, Pizzazz 21, for a score of 84. Three years later, WOTC gives us a second Merilith in 2009's Monster Manual Savage Encounter set, and she is all about the swords. She wields one in each of her 6 hands, 4 of the 6 with barbed edges on the blades. Also posed upright and in full attack mode, her breastplate doesn't quite offer the protection of the previous minis, but I do like the detail of the thin chains. Demonic fashionista, I suppose. She also has an expressive facial features, with upswept eyebrows that give her a more calculating and less batshit crazy look of the previous one. Score: Paint 16, Pose 19, Playability 20, Pizzazz 20, for a score of 75. WizKids' one and only Merilith comes in their Tomb of Annihilation set of 2017. A bit smaller than the WOTC version, her pose is also slightly different. She appears to be slithering forward rather than waiting for her foe to come to her. Another sword enthusiast, we get a two-tone green on her serpentine body, while her breastplate shines brightly on her torso. It's a decent mini, but I prefer either of the WOTC versions. Score: Paint 20, Pose 17, Playability 20, Pizzazz 15, for a score of 72.
Mirazai demons are easily mistaken for ghouls. One of their favorite tactics is to hide in a mob of ghouls and attack. I'm sure I don't have to tell you they are far more powerful than they look. Primarily, it is their ability to absorb the experiences and memories of those they consume. They travel to the mortal planes for one reason: seek out and eat those of great power of intellect, returning to the abyss more powerful than they were before.
This Mirazai mini comes from 2019's Volo and Mordenkainen's Foes set, will perfectly blend in with a Gnoll horde and deliver a nasty surprise to that mid-level adventuring party looking to score some easy XP. Reaching out with a filthy claw, its pale skin offset by dark hair and clad only in a ragged loincloth. Facial detailing could be better, but the mouth, full of sharp teeth, is apparent. Score: Paint 12, Pose 13, Playability 15, Pizzazz 13, for a score of 53.
Maw demons, also known as abyssal maws, are basically a big round ball of teeth with 3 eyes and 4 arms surrounding a truly large mouth full of sharp teeth. Not particularly intelligent, they live to consume, preferably mortals, but like sharks, they will eat anything. No telling what treasure one might find in the gullet of a maw demon. Fun fact, their hunger is truly spectacular. They can consume a horse in under a minute.
Again, we get only one maw demon per manufacturer, but you have to go way back to the Dragon Eye set of 2003 to get the WOTC version, which is a shame because it's the better version. Baby blue in color with black tipped claws on the hands and feet and pupilless eyes, its mouth, a dark slash down the middle of the body, is amply filled with teeth and doubtlessly ready for dinner. Score: Paint 17, Pose 15, Playability 13, Pizzazz 19, for a score of 64. The WizKids version from 2019's Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus set is smaller and not nearly as colorful as the WOTC version, although the red on the inside of the maw is a nice touch. The monochrome black body allows the teeth and claws to stand out while the yellow eyes search out their next meal. Being a newer mini probably makes it easier to get, but if you have the means, you should pick up a couple of the WOTC versions. Score: Paint 14, Pose 15, Playability 13, Pizzazz 13 for a score of 55.
When a hill giant prays to Yanagu, sometimes he listens, turning the supplicant into a maul of Yanagu, who act as the front-line tanks in his armies, charging through the enemy ranks with no concern for safety, clawing, biting, and trampling his foes in their headlong charge. Unlike most of Yanagu's hybrids, the maul retains most of his hill giant appearances, with one notable exception.
We get our only Maul of Yanagu in 2023's Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants set, which makes sense as one appears in the adventure. His pink hill giant body is posed very low to the ground, basically charging forward on hands and feet like an animal. The long black mane and spotted shoulders offer contrast, but of course the main feature is the creature's namesake, a giant open mouth, red of tongue and full of teeth. I've never had the opportunity to DM one of these guys, but I'm curious. Score: Pain 18, Pose 24, Playability 14, Pizzazz 21 for a score of 77.
And with that, we have finished part 2 of our Demon Review. We'll finish them out next week when we pick things back up, starting with the Molly Diaz. As always, I appreciate you watching Eye of the Beholder. Please feel free to leave a comment. I read them all and try to respond in kind. See you next week.